This speaker has been recorded at an online meeting of Addictive Eaters Anonymous. You can email us at contact@aeainfo.org.
So the first Friday of the month at this meeting, we have a speaker. So tonight's speaker is Janelle. Thanks, Janelle.
Thanks, Kay. My name's Janelle and I'm an addictive eater, and I'm very grateful to be at the meeting. And I was just thinking about, what was I going to share, and just thinking back to my earliest memories around food. And I wasn't born with an off switch where food is concerned, and I still haven't got an off switch, but what I've been given is a daily reprieve by my higher power. So just thinking back to being a preschool, I was probably 4, and I can remember being given, I'm not sure whether it was mine or whether it was my younger sister's, a little play set of pots and pans, tiny little ones. They were metal, and I can remember dragging a chair over to the bench and popping them on the stove and turning the element on and putting something in it to cook. And I just knew that I didn't do pretend food. I just knew that if you put something in that pot, you could cook it and you could eat it. And I'm not sure how far, I can't imagine Mum let me go the whole way and cook something, but I can certainly remember knowing what to do with that pot and knowing that you put food in it and you were gonna eat it. And my other memory about that time is we were given orange flavored vitamin C tablets and fluoride tablets, because the water wasn't fluoridated in Timaru, and climbing up to the top cupboard, because they're in the top cupboard because you don't want your children to get them. But I got the chair and got into the top cupboard and ate, I'm not sure how many of the fluoride tablets. They were ghastly. They were horrible things, but I ate them. And the vitamin C tablets, I ate them as well. So that was the end of the vitamin C and the fluoride for the whole family, because Mum just stopped getting them after that. So I just always was food focused. And I can remember primary school with my friend sneaking sugar from the kitchen and going down and getting rhubarb stems and going behind the garage and dipping the rhubarb, breaking the end off the rhubarb, dipping it in the sugar and eating that. So just food focused, taking money out of Mum's purse to go to the shop to buy lollies, and then eating them on the way home, and then sitting down to have my tea. And sometimes Mum would send me around and you could get pieces of sort of a cream filled sponge, and that was going to be for the lunches. So of course I had to run my finger around it before it got home, getting the fresh bread from the dairy and nibbling all around the bottom of the crust, because it wasn't sliced and it wasn't wrapped. So every sandwich would have had the 2 bottom corners missing out of the sandwich, because I'd nibbled my way around the bottom of the loaf. So I was a little food-seeking missile from the word go. So as a consequence, of that eating, I was overweight as a child and obese as an adult. Children's parties, I wasn't there for the games. I couldn't wait until the food started. And the worst game of all was the chocolate game, where you had to put the hat and the scarf and the gloves on, and you had to throw a 6. And if you got the 6, then it was your turn, and then you had to eat the chocolate with the knife and fork. And then someone else would throw a 6, so you had to take all that off and pass it to them. And the nearly getting there, but then having to take it all off because someone else had got the 6, and I was just there for the food. I wasn't there to play games or celebrate anyone's birthday. So that was sort of the the makings of my eating, which just carried on through my life. I left school and went to work in a bakery, and said, prior to that, baking at home for the lunches, so-called for the lunches, and I'd eat the creamed butter and sugar, and then I'd eat the mixture raw, and then I'd burn my tongue on it when it came out of the oven. And then later on, when I had my own home and I was baking, I generally had to make a double mixture, because by the time I'd eaten it in all forms, there needed to be a double mixture for there to be enough for anyone else to eat. So got a job in a bakery, and I said to myself, I'm not going to eat anything. I'm not going to eat anything from anywhere. So that lasted till probably a day and a half, and was my job to ice the slices and the biscuits and the cakes and things. And I justified my eating that when there was a big slice and you had to trim the crusts off it, that eating those trimmings wasn't eating, because I was just eating the crusts, and that wasn't eating. And if I ate savouries out of the cooler that were cold, well, that wasn't eating, because they were cold savouries, they weren't hot savouries, so that wasn't a savoury. If I had a sausage roll out of the pie warmer and I just ate the pastry, well, that wasn't eating the sausage roll, I was only eating the pastry. So I had all these warped ideas in my mind that justified my eating. Sneaking food, stealing food from there. I could walk with a tray of apple shortcake from my bench out to the shop, which was about 4 meters, and in the bit where you went through the curtain, I could inhale a piece of apple slice and swallow it without chewing, and then carry on my way out. And you know, that was the little blind spot that I knew no one could see me. So just you know, I was my whole life I was either eating food or thinking about what I was going to eat next. And as a consequence of that eating, as I said, you know, I was obese as an adult, and thought from my mid-teens that when I'm a normal size, I won't want to eat all the time. I'll be fixed, and I'll suddenly know how to do life, because I didn't know how you did life. I felt like I was born without the instruction manual. And I'd know how you had a boyfriend, because I didn't know how you did that. And I'd know what job I wanted to do. And I'd know how to have friends, because I didn't know how you had friends. Life sort of happened over there, just out of reach. It was somewhere over there, and I was over here. And it was like there was a wall between me and life happening. And I just knew miraculously, well, I thought that would miraculously all sort itself out when I was a normal size. And I can remember in primary school as a 10-year-old thinking, well, when I got to intermediate, which is sort of, I don't know, middle school, when I got to intermediate, life would be better. And then life at intermediate wasn't any better. And I thought, well, when I get to high school, life would be better. And I don't know many 10-year-olds that are thinking that life will get better. I think they're just doing life and playing and doing things. But I just thought life's got to be better. You know, something's got to be better. Well, it will be better. I just thought it will be better. And then when I, got to my mid-teens, I thought, well, when I'm a normal size, it will be better. And I had depression in my 6th form year, and carried on with that depression through my life, really. But looking back now, it was just basic, complete self-centeredness. So I got married. I married the first chap that asked me out, because I thought, well, no one else will have me, so I better grab him. And I didn't particularly like him, but I thought, well, no one else will have me. And thought, well, we'd had our own home, and because I'd lived at home until I got married, and Mum would say to me, don't you think you've had enough to eat? And when I had my own home, it was just open slather because there was no one there to sort of look and see my eating. And she would have seen a fraction of my eating because I ate at night time. I stole food out of the cupboards. So then I've got my own home, and my ex-husband worked night shifts, so I could do a lot of eating at night time when he wasn't there. And I'd be backwards and forwards to the freezer, and I'd have a teaspoon, and I'd have a teaspoon of ice cream, and I'd go back, and then I'd be backwards and forwards, and then half the container of ice cream would have gone. And I thought, but I've only had a teaspoon. I've only had a teaspoon. Yes, but you've been backwards and forwards 10 times. I didn't see that. So I became more and more obese, and the more I ate and the bigger I was, the worse I felt, and the worse I felt, the more I ate. So I was becoming bigger, and my life was becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point where I could barely answer the telephone or go out the door, because I knew that people knew that I ate too much. And so along with my eating, which was the first half of the first step, which was all I could see that was wrong with me, had no idea about the unmanageability of my life. And looking back, that unmanageability was far and away bigger than my eating ever was. And it was just sitting in meetings and relating to people talking about how their lives used to be, and that they weren't like that anymore. And heard a lot about fear, and realized after a few months coming that squirmy feeling I had in my stomach that I thought was hunger was actually fear. And I would eat and it would go away, and I think, oh well, I must, I was obviously hungry. But there's no way that anyone who ate as frequently in the vast quantities of food that I ate was ever going to be hungry. And then started the sort of the joining the dots of the crippling fear, the being taken to preschool and thinking, well, mum's not coming back to get me, so having to sit looking at the door the whole time thinking she's not coming back to get me. And getting to high school, and my wheels fell off basically in the third form, because I couldn't do high school. It was too much of a change, and I couldn't cope. And the fear from that caused me to have alopecia, and I had a bald spot. My hair on the back of my head fell out. So I was already self-conscious about my weight, so now I've got a bald patch on the top of my head. So I was doubly self-conscious, and my eating's just increasing. And so along with that, there's the depression, the anxiety, the hopelessness and despair, really, which had always been in my life. And what got me to the program was at 32 going to a diet club and losing weight and getting to a normal size, and people saying, gosh, you look wonderful, you must feel great. And I felt no different on the inside, and I knew then in my heart of hearts that whatever was wrong with me, a diet wasn't the answer to what was wrong with me. And I walked around for about a fortnight saying, well, what is the answer? And I believe that my higher power heard, and found a library, a display of information at a local library, and picked a 15 questions pamphlet up and ticked 14 out of 15 of those, and took it home and showed my ex-husband and said, and he said, I says, oh, do you think this sounds like me? And he says, oh no, you're not that bad, because no one saw the amount of food that I needed to eat. It was all done in secret. And So I rang the number and went and spoke to someone, or she spoke to me and invited me to a meeting, which I came to. And here for the first time were the people who were like me, because I thought I was the only one in the world who ate the way I ate. And, you know, I'd been to the doctor, I'd tried diets, but, you know, by morning tea, I couldn't hold on any longer. I couldn't hold the dam back, and tried diet pills from the doctor, which I loved, and I knew that I'd better not go back and get any more of those diet pills. Hadn't done counselling or therapy because I couldn't tell anyone about my eating and the way I felt about myself, the self-hatred and the self-loathing. So here were a room full of people, and they just looked like normal people. They were happy and chatting, and there was something about them that was really, really attractive to me. And I knew I was home. I knew that this was my tribe, and I started coming. I came for a couple of weeks, and we needed to get a babysitter because my ex-husband had overtime, and I thought, well, I can do this. I've come for a couple of weeks. And I had a cleaning job at that time, and they had sort of snack boxes. It was after hours, and they had snack boxes that the staff could buy things out of. And I started eating, and I ate the whole snack box and ate for 5 days. When I went back to my for 3 days, I ate for 3 days, and on the Tuesday was my weigh-in, because I was still going to the diet club, and I'd put on 5 kgs in 3 days. And I knew that there was no limit to the amount that I could eat, and that was constant eating 24/7. And my jaw ached and my stomach hurt, but I had to keep eating. And thankfully, the lady who 12-stepped me gave me a ring because she hadn't seen me, and I said, I think I need to come back. And I'm so grateful that I did come back, and you know, became willing to do what we need to do to be sober and to live well lives. And so it's interesting, you know, interesting journey. I wasn't eating, and because all I could see that was wrong with me was the weight, and I had a food plan, and I thought, well, that's it, I'm fixed. And then 15 months later, I woke up one morning, it was a Good Friday, and I just had this radio station screaming in my head, and I thought, oh my God, this thing's in my head. It's my thinking, it's not what goes in the mouth, it's in the head. And I just got out of bed, and I'm just on my knees beside the bed saying to God, you've got to fix me, you've got to do this, because I can't do this. And for me, I believe that was a turning point. It was a surrender, and knowing that I couldn't do it, and I was beyond human aid. And I waited, you know, a few hours to ring my sponsor, and she said, we'll go to a lunchtime meeting. And in between that 5 o'clock and the 12 o'clock meeting, I felt much better, actually. And oh, well, I don't really need to go to a meeting now, because I'm really, really much better. Oh, well, I told my sponsor I'd go, so I better go. So I got to the meeting, and you know, it's just one of the miracles of this program. And there was a chap there who said, I've got a disease that tells me I don't have a disease. And I thought, well, that was my experience, you know, and I just knew, I became willing then to do the things that I hadn't really been willing to do. My sponsor would say, are you ringing people? And I'd say, yes. Hand on my heart, I could say I was ringing people. But I rang the people I knew who were going to be at work, because I didn't actually want to talk to them. And I became willing to talk to the people, just to ring and do every single thing, because all of a sudden I was mad. I was absolutely mad, completely mad. And sitting in a meeting gave me an hour and a half's reprieve, and all I could do was to not pick up the first one, get to a meeting and put my head on the pillow. And if I hadn't done that, that was a good day. And the obsession was, the obsession out was about 700 out of 100, just that constant wanting to eat. And I just had to be on my knees. I just had to be praying. I just had to be meditating until it passed. And being willing to go to any lengths, doing a 4th and 5th step. And but the fear didn't leave me. The fear of eating again. I couldn't say I was in recovery. I couldn't trust that the problem had been removed, because I just couldn't. So that led me 8 years into recovery, to trying to end my life. I couldn't do the 3rd step, is what the problem was. I couldn't hand the will in my life over to the care of God, because I thought I had to be 310, do everything 310% perfectly, or I was going to eat. And so as a consequence of that, thankfully I wasn't successful, and I spent time in a psychiatric hospital. And the day that I went there, so here was someone whose biggest fear was that the problem hadn't been removed and they were going to eat again. So it was a Friday, and I got taken there about lunchtime, and showed to my room and heard someone say, "Oh, good, it's fish and chips for tea." And I thought, oh my God, here I am. I can't prepare my food plan. I'm completely powerless over this situation. I'm completely powerless over my food. And I just said to God, well, if it's fish and chips for tea, it's fish and chips for tea. And if the problem's been, well, actually I didn't even think that. I just thought, if it's fish and chips for tea, I got to trust that I'll be all right. And so it came to tea time, and I think there were about 18 people on the ward, and 17 people ordered fish and chips. I hadn't made my order, because you ordered it the day before, so I was just having fish and chips. And then a vegetarian meal came that nobody had ordered. No one on that ward ordered a vegetarian meal. So I had a vegetarian meal, which was closer to my food plan than fish and chips were. And then I just had that knowing from that moment that whatever happened to me, it was going to be all right, because I certainly hadn't ordered that vegetarian meal, but it arrived. And I was looked after. I've been looked after from that time on. So that was the beginning of the trust and the faith, when I was in a situation that I could only pray over, and develop that knowing that whatever happened, it was going to be all right. So and it's ironic that the things I worried about when I was eating, crippled by what would happen, and what if this happened, and what if that happened, and then what's going to happen to me. Far worse things have happened in recovery than ever happened when I was eating. And I've been looked after. And my children, I left my marriage, and my children, they were 15 and 18. They wouldn't speak to me, and I didn't see them or talk to them for 8 months. And I knew I couldn't fix that either. I could not. If I was going to get in there and try and fix that relationship with them, I just knew I would make it worse. I just had to leave it. And I saw them on Christmas Day. They came to my parents' house Christmas Day, and then shortly, a few days later, they came to my flat. And from then on, we've developed a loving, a loving parent, child. They're men now, but I've got a lovely relationship with them, and I just knew that was something I couldn't fix either. And and to all intents and purposes today, I've got what looks like a very, very normal life, which starts with getting out of bed, having the breakfast, cleaning the teeth, getting dressed. Well, that certainly never happened when I was, when I was in the food. I wasn't able to do my job. I'd turn up right on time and I'd leave a few minutes early. I wouldn't work. I'd think, well, my attitude was, well, you're jolly lucky to have me. Don't expect me to work. You're lucky I've turned up. So, that's not my attitude today either. And I can be, I can be a mother and a nana and a sister. I couldn't be a sister. I felt like I was an only child. I've got 2 younger sisters. I can support my parents who are aging, who are, thrilled to see me. I can be in a loving relationship today. Think of other people, and I guess that's a really big thing, because I was just crippled by self. My attitude was, I never asked to be born. It's all mum's fault because I never asked to be born. So that gave me the chip on my shoulder, which allowed me to do what I wanted. And to know that today I've got a fellowship that I belong to and belong in, and the fellowship is my kin, and through hearing other people's recovery and seeing their recovery, I've learned how to do life, and having a higher power today who does for me what I can't do for myself, because I'm still a food addict, but I'm given a daily reprieve, and that higher power hasn't let me down yet. And sometimes things, there's transitions and there's new things happen, and a bit unsure how all this is gonna go, but I just basically do the next thing in front of me, because I'm not running my life. I've got my belief that my higher power wants what's best for me, and develop that conscious contact through meditation and prayer, and the comfort, that brings in the stability of having that faith that, I don't have to, I'm not the one flying the plane today. I'm the one down the back serving the drinks, and I let God fly the plane. And, my best efforts at running my life got me here. That's how good I am, at running my life, and, grateful for sponsorship, that there's someone who I can run things past and has got my best interests at heart. And it's not always what I want to hear, but it's what I need to hear. And, I haven't been put wrong thus far. And, I just know that if I do tomorrow what I've done today, that I'll have another sober day, and life continues to get better. It was, for me, at the end of my eating, it was a black tunnel. Life was a black tunnel getting darker and blacker and narrower, and today it's the reverse. It gets lighter and brighter, and I get lighter and brighter. I'm not so caught up in myself, and it opens out. And just encourage anyone who's new just to keep coming, and the miracle will happen for you too. So thank you for the opportunity to share.